Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Thank you, sir. Good to see everybody here. We're going to go ahead and get our joint workshop brought to order. This is a joint workshop of the Flagler Beach City Commission, Flagler County Board of County Commissioners, Palm Coast City Council, City of Bunnell Commission, Town of Beverly Beach Commission, and the Town of Marineland officials. This is Wednesday, August 27th, 2025. It is 5:31 p.m. If I could have everybody stand for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, we take a brief moment of silence for individual prayer, reflection, or meditation. We take this time to honor and remember our first responders and the men and women in our military who keep us safe and protect our freedoms at home and abroad. And we also want to take a moment to remember Fendrick Gabaud, a fire rescue recruit who passed away on Friday during training. Our hearts are with his family and friends during this difficult time. All right, thank you very much. We'll go ahead and do roll call. We'll start on our left with the City of Bunnell, and we'll work our way down. So, again, good evening.
David Atkinson, Commissioner. Good evening.
Thank you.
Kathleen Robinson, Mayor. Good evening.
Mike Norris, Palm Coast Mayor.
Ty Miller, Palm Coast City Council.
Leanne Pennington, District 4, Flagler County Commission.
Andy Dance, County Commission Chair.
Eric Cooley, City of Flagler Beach.
Rick Belhumeur, City of Flagler Beach, Vice Chair.
Jeff Skidema, Beverly Beach.
Very good. I see we have Flagler Beach's relief pitcher in for us. Good job. All right, we will go ahead and we've got 3 items for discussion. We're going to touch on Flagler Beach lifeguards. We're also going to talk about our Unified Front for Legislative Appropriations and then the beach discussion. We'll continue the beach discussion as the third item. All right, so with this, I've got the clicker. I am. Let's see if this works. Where am I? Anywhere? It is on. It's got to be user error.
Buttons are on the other side.
All right, there we go. The agenda that I just went over. So regarding lifeguards, and this came up earlier in the year, but we've been able to review the legislative changes on the use of TDD revenues. So there has been an amendment, House Bill 731, and basically the short of it is that the law has changed to where TDT revenues can be used to pay lifeguards. So we've always had even this year, this budget cycle, we've had ongoing issues about who's paying for lifeguards. So now we have this as an option, recurring source of revenue as long as the legislature stays out of TDC revenues and that allocation. But just wanted to get everybody's take on this change. You can see that there's a split between local visitation and traveler visitation. So it's not that the entirety of the general revenue funds go toward lifeguards. It could be split based on traveler visitation and local visitation, and then further divvying up local visitation into different pods. But I guess I'll start off with Flagler Beach. If you've had a chance to look at this and had any comments on the legislative change.
Well, the legislative change is favorable. it's a good use of money. A lot of the tourists that come here tend to flock towards the guarded areas. And tourists and non-residents of Flagler Beach are the vast majority of the ones getting pulled out of the water. So it's very favorable. I don't know where county sits as far as, their appetite to, the tourism funds are getting, hit pretty good with beach renourishment right now. So I don't know how practical it'd be to add that, but it is a tourism style initiative. And that kind of brings up, one of the questions that the city of Flagler Beach had is, based off of this coming up as a topic of discussion, is a guarded beach, desirable for the county? Is one of the questions that the city of Flagler Beach had for the rest of the county. It is a benefit to the city, but it is not nearly as much a benefit to the city as the county, just because of who visits the guarded areas and who makes use of the lifeguard. Basically lifeguards getting pulled out. And that's something that we were looking to get data on so we can make decisions on that when we're looking at strategic plan and budgeting and following the program and seeing where it goes. The total cost, last time this was studied, it was a couple years ago, but the total cost of the lifeguard program was a little bit below $400,000. And, county helps us out, and it makes a big difference. And our, as everybody knows, our budget isn't gigantic, and everybody's watching their funds right now, but it makes a big difference. And to have that go away, I can't say would put the program in jeopardy, but I know it would definitely become a talking point about, is this intelligent to continue if it's not a priority of our county residents? I hope that makes sense. We're just trying to get a barometer on that, see how everybody feels. Did I miss anything?
I don't know you missed anything, but I know that when earlier, before you guys finished your budget, putting it together, the contribution from the county towards the lifeguard program was going to go away, and we were scrambling on how we were going to contend with that, whether we were going to make our lifeguard program smaller, which seemed to be the way it was going. So I don't think that's what we, as a county, really want to see, is less lifeguards on the beach. And as Commissioner Cooley just said, most of the people that get pulled out by the lifeguards are not Flagler Beach residents, but they would have been footing the entire bill. Of course, the county came back and graciously put it back in their budget. But this would certainly be a help to both the city and the county, because the city wouldn't have to pull money from their general fund.
Well, I think personally what I would like to see is just that we end up with some type of ongoing agreement so that it doesn't become a budget battle issue. Nobody wins in that. So part of what the discussion here was, and again, we don't have to decide anything here today, but it's in our budget. We've baked it into our budget this year, so we've got time before, to work on this for next year's budget from our standpoint. But we can look at the data. There's some data included in the attachments about the Tourism Development Council's distribution of where people go, where visitors are going, where locals are going. And if over these next few months, as we look at this issue, maybe we look at the total budget. The news of the total budget of the program costing $400,000 was news to me today. So maybe we have to take a look at those costs to find out how those are split up. And based on where visitors are going and how many are local versus visitors, I think it's appropriate for the TDC funds to probably be able to pay for some of this, but I don't think, like you said, with all the other needs for the funding, that it's 100% out of TDC. But is there any other? Yes, sir, Mr. Goley.
Well, just to add a little bit, and also this is going to kind of muddy the water a little bit. So one of the things that started the multi-municipality meetings was the topic of carrying capacity of Flagler Beach and all the beachgoers to begin with, and part of that was the lifeguard program or the guarded area. With the large increases in population that we've had and we're also looking at that are planned, a discussion about a larger lifeguard program was desired, and also a larger program in Flagler Beach, and also a potential guarded program at other locations too. For instance, try to cram everybody into the central business district in Flagler Beach. There was questions raised on, is it practical to have that be the only guarded area in the county, or would it be a good idea to have other guarded beaches to just reduce that load and the congestion in that one specific area?
No, I good topics. We did touch on that. I don't think we came as a commission to agreement on putting any more lifeguards at some of the other potential access points, but we can add that to this coming year as well.
It's more, a strategic initiative. You're looking at your just population growth. What do you have planned, and where's the load of folks going to be, and the benefits of the citizens. Where are the local citizens going, and to what beach?
Okay. Ms. Pennington, anything?
No, so with the takeaway since it requires 2/3 of a vote from our board to determine whether or not we do use TDT funds. So are we just trying to get a consensus here that we take it back to the board to propose that we use TDT?
I don't know that from this meeting, I think we will take it back for discussion, but since there's only two of us here.
Right, no,
We just bring
is that
back
what you're
the discussion,
asking?
yeah.
Yeah, and then I think Mr. Cooley's topic about whether or not we can expand it based on this data that shows how many visitors locally attend our beaches, maybe, ask the board if they have an appetite to expand to see if that alleviates any issues down in Flagler Beach. What it sounds like.
And I think one of the main questions that our city had is where does our county and our other municipalities stand on, what's their position on their thoughts on guarded beaches and the value to the citizens and that type of thing. Because when the press started reporting that support for the guarded beaches was being discussed and potentially in jeopardy, that started a discussion of, does the county do they find value in this program? And, I guess, while we were all here talking, it would be good to know just where everybody's heads are at, surrounding that. Is there value? Is it important to the citizens? That kind of thing.
Well, again, outside of budget, I think it becomes lost as a budget line item, and we're not having that discussion. So outside of the budget, we need to have that discussion
Yeah,
within
and like you
amongst the
said, you got a better
commissioners.
part of a year to do that, so.
Yeah, right. As we transition, close out this budget cycle and start working on the next.
We're talking about an agreement. I thought there was an ILA with the program. Isn't there something that is
I'm getting
documented?
yes.
Okay.
There is an
Okay.
interlocal agreement. We updated it a few years ago to include a cost of living or COLA, CPI.
So would there need to be something different, is what you were referencing when you were talking about an agreement, or just?
I guess we'll need to look at the agreement, because
Okay.
if we can, right, if it's, if we've got an agreement that bakes in the funding allocations, and it shouldn't be subject to a line item in the budget that can be pulled during budget discussions. So I would venture we look at, into that agreement, make sure it's solid.
Okay, good info.
Okay. Any other comments from down here? I know the non-beach side, or I don't want to, if you guys have thoughts on it, feel free to jump in.
My thought is that safety is paramount. And I can remember years ago when Mr. Gamble drowned trying to rescue someone. And I don't think there were lifeguards. That was, and so Gamble State Park is named after him. But I was in the ER working when they brought him in, so that's a vivid memory. So to me, it's all about safety. If I were going to go to the beach, which I probably don't, I would want to go somewhere where there's a lifeguard. I would not want to go down the beach 10 or 12 blocks where there's no one and fend for myself, because I think it's dangerous.
I think families agree to that point, and we want to make sure that we're receptive and open to everybody. Mr. Miller?
Yeah, just some things I would want to consider in terms of, the potential strategic expansion or moving of lifeguards is, one, so we have kind of zip codes in this data, but, what the actual real numbers are to see, where other people are going, as well as in terms of those county beaches, what do the numbers look like for, accidents or drownings, or, where should we be targeting in terms of that versus, or, I don't even know whether it's a problem or not a problem. Obviously that's separate from the strategic conversation where you're trying to draw people away from a condensed area. So I think that would be important to know for the future discussions, those raw numbers, aside from just kind of what percentage are from without and within the county. More specific numbers, if it's, X amount of people visiting those beaches, how many in comparison to Flagler Beach, because I wouldn't want to, unless it's purely strategic, focus on areas that don't have a problem. Don't want to fix a problem that doesn't exist, so to speak. So I would just consider that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so takeaways on this topic as we move forward would be relooking at the ILA, incorporating TDC funds into the funding allocation, relooking at the visitors versus local usage of the beaches, and potential expansion into other public access points to try and ease the burden on central Flagler Beach. That sound about right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Any other final comments on that one?
Well, I had a question. It was news to me about the interlocal, so thank you for bringing that up. Does the interlocal have some sort of clause built in about cancellation? I know it wasn't just part of our discussion this year with the budget, but did it?
It does. When it was amended in 2020, it allowed for a 3-year commitment, and then after that 3-year commitment, it would automatically renew unless we gave notice, and that was part of the budget process, was providing that notice in case we weren't doing it.
Okay. That's
So
right.
I can send that to our board.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. All right, let's move on. Let's open up for public comment on this topic. If anybody wanted to speak on this topic, I'll open the floor for public comment. All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment, move on to the next item. Unified Front for Legislative Appropriations. So let's go through important dates. If you haven't been alerted yet, September 19th from 3 to 5 p.m. is the legislative delegation meeting here in these chambers. I think if you contact each of your administrators, you probably can get the number for the staff to get on the agenda. So if you want to speak at the legislative delegation meeting, there's a staff member that is in charge of the meeting that you can contact to get on the agenda. I think each of us typically governments get on and speak about our policies and or our priorities for funding. As we've met with Representative Greco, Senator League, the theme is infrastructure and storm resiliency. They've made that abundantly clear that that those are the topics that they can. I think Senator Leake's words at the chamber breakfast was, "Give me something I can fight for," and it's going to be infrastructure and storm resiliency issues. Let's go back. Is there, on this, Ms. Petita, was there any, on this topic, how did you want us to approach any discussion on our unified topics, or just to make sure that everybody was aware of these deadlines?
I think it's, for us, it was just to make them aware of the deadlines, but I do believe that one of the cities or towns asked for this to be on here, so I don't know if they had specific questions, or maybe the slide answers their question because the date for the delegation meeting didn't get announced until yesterday, so I don't know if that was maybe the reason why somebody asked for it.
Okay, so then typically the county puts together the unified program. All the different municipalities submit their items, and county puts it all together in a unified program. So we're still planning to do that again. So make sure that everybody gets their stuff to county staff, to Holly, I would assume, right? So Ms. Albanese by September 5th, so that we can compile all that and put it together in that nice packet. On this topic, Benel, Mayor, did you have anything that you want to discuss, or
Not at this point.
you good with infrastructure and resiliency?
Infrastructure works for me.
Okay. Mayor? Yes, sir. Okay. I know that's your priorities as well.
It's going to be that way for a while.
Right. Flagler Beach, I mean, I
Just a
heard Dale
question.
on Friday talking about infrastructure.
Just a question. So when you were talking to our representatives, did they give you any type of indication, or are they looking more for lobbying for expansion of infrastructure, or are we talking about replacement of aged infrastructure?
I
Did they give
don't,
you any hints on that? Because that's pretty broad, just.
yeah, I would say the replacement of age would fall under the resiliency, you're hardening. So I would think I think both. Personally, I don't know if
Yeah,
wanted to add anything?
when I met with Representative Greco, he was more specific to roads, it seems like, repaving, specifically hurricane routes. They felt was a really good, tie-in to your project. Evacuation routes, keeping the project at $5 million or less, having some sort of match, whether that be money,
Land, et cetera.
land, anything like that. And as far as storm resiliency. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a stormwater project, but tell us how it ties into hardening your area for any type of hurricane. Like we did, was it last year or the year before, we had done a special needs shelter, which got fully funded. So making sure that it's, you can really justify how it's going to help you in a hurricane or a storm. Having any type of match helps them a lot, keeping the project. If you have a large project that needs to be done, and it's obviously over $5 million, you can look at phasing it. So bucketing it out in phases, so it makes it more manageable for them to present.
That sounds about right.
Okay, very good info, thank you.
We each kind of split up. I know Commissioner Pennington went and visited with Representative Greco, myself, and Administrator Petito, and a group went to sit with Senator Leake, and we basically all coalesced around those same topics of giving him something that he can get his teeth into and fight for us on the Hill and infrastructure. So I think storm resiliency really is, I think, is Representative Greco's one of his hot topics too.
Yeah, they said it, and it was very popular. It was broad from all the counties, and it seemed to get the most funding last year. It seems to get the most funding every year.
And I will
storm
add that I think
Aside from 2 years.
the legislature still is a mess. The word I got is the infighting is still there from last year. If we're going to get something through, it's probably going to go through as a Senate appropriation, not through the House. The House is just not the avenue to expect things to go this year.
I went to the Florida League of Cities annual conference, and the lobbyists there expressed the same thing, that they expect it to continue throughout the next session as well. Very similar things that this year had. So there's going to be only certain things that can get through, essentially, because it's got to be a high priority for both sides.
Yes, Rick.
I'm just wondering if there's any strength in numbers if we all ask for similar things. And my thought is along the lines of wastewater treatment. We all got to get out of the Intracoastal sometime relatively soon. I don't remember the exact date, but it's not far off. So Bunnell's growing, we're all growing. And so our wastewater treatment plants are an issue. I know Palm Coast is struggling, trying to increase their capacity. Bunnell's going to have to do something in the future with what they just passed, and us as well. So we all got to figure out a way to increase our capacity and get out of dumping water into the Intracoastal. So I'm just wondering if we're all asking for the same thing. I don't know if that would be
Well, we're the only one not in the utility business, so
right.
we don't mind. I was more than happy to see Palm Coast get the money last year because that was definitely needed. So if there's anything that we can do to help you as well, we just don't have the utility issues.
Right, understood.
But it's an environmental issue as well that affects the entire county, so up and down the intercoastal.
So I don't know, haven't talked to the senator and congressman yet personally, but I know Palm Coast had interactions in reference to wastewater treatment. So what was your, how were you greeted with your request?
So with Congressman Fine, I think the conversation was a recognition of the problems. There was a little bit of separation of responsibilities, right, between federal, state, and local in terms of him saying that he views these as local issues, locally funded. However, he did say that he would do whatever he could to help, and he also said that framing it in terms of water discharge and things like that allows him to make that argument much better because of the intercoastal and things like that, rather than maybe specifically, I&I or something like that happens with our wastewater treatment. That is a separate issue. So focusing on those things that are water quality in terms of the discharge back into the local area would be something that would allow him to fight for it better. That's what I got from it. He did say he views it as a locally funded issue, that we're responsible for it, but he recognized that we need help and that he would try to do that. Referenced, I believe Bunnell received some federal money as well recently, referenced that as well. So basically said, there is money out there and we'll try to fight for it. But in terms of certain infrastructure, he believes that to be local in terms of responsibility. So I think there's positives to take from it, right? That, there's certain things that we can ask that maybe have a much better chance of being funded than overall or infrastructure in general.
That was one of the key things that they recommended, which is if it's a local project that the state sees that needs to be funded locally, but you need assistance of funding it, right? So let's say it's wastewater, tie it to a state initiative. So find what the state's, trying to get, everybody off septic, whatever the initiative is, and make that the headline of your ask. This is how this ties into what the state is asking us to do. We can't do it on our own. We need the state to help us, but this is our problem, and tie it into why it's an important initiative to the state as well. And that was his big thing.
Just to add on to that, during the last legislative session, we all went and spoke with DEP as well about their grant programs. And, 2 years ago, a lot of our asks that made it through appropriations were line item vetoed by the governor and kind of pointed to the grant programs and said, go get that money instead because there's money for it, except for a lot of those criteria filtered us out automatically. So we weren't eligible for a lot of those grant programs. So they had mentioned that specifically there's similarly discharge-related, reducing, discharges into the local environment grants that we should target in terms of that. And I don't know if staff can help out, kind of pointing you to the same programs that we're looking at, trying to identify and put in grant packages for to get some of that money as well.
Okay, thank you.
I would think that focusing on the discharges and trying to solve that through your, right, that's what you're trying to fix through expansion or through,
Well, one of our other big problems is Councilman just said, I&I, which is intrusion, saltwater intrusion into the sewer lines. And we can't create reuse water as long as it's extremely salty. So we're having to do a lot of infrastructure upgrades and repairs on our lift stations and pump stations and try and find where this water is getting in. So there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle to make it all happen, and time's ticking. So that's what we're up against.
okay. All right, anything else on this topic? All right, I'll open the floor up for public discussion on this topic, if anybody wanted to speak to this. Good afternoon.
David Eckert, Cali del Sur. I think it was about 3 years ago that Steve Davis and I made a presentation to Mayor Elfin and the city staff relative to compound flooding. And last meeting on the legislative BOCC for the county, I brought up the topic of critically eroded beaches for State Statute 161. Fitting into the discussion that you've just had relative to how all these things knit together relative to infrastructure, I think you should focus on 2 or 3 different statutes for areas of critical state concern, outfalls, infrastructure associated with that, and go up into the Summerhaven area as well as to the south to the in Flagler Beach to Tomoka River, and fit that together in a way that you can show the risks associated with compound flooding. And the compound flooding study that's being completed now, I think it's supposed to be in the next 3 or 4 months or so, it'll be completed, shows tremendous ability to control the impact of outfalls from City of Palm Coast, as well as all of the outfalls to the intercoastal waterway. And it makes up to a 4-foot difference depending upon how those different water flows come down during heavy rainfall, breaching through the dunes, through the inlets, and so forth. So that 3 or 4 foot difference between the compound impact of all those coming together at the wrong time, as well as attaining critically eroded beach designation and so forth, has potential of gaining $10, $20, $30 million in grant requests at the state and federal level. So I proposed to the county at the last meeting to revise some of the wording in State Statute 161 relative to critically eroded beach, and I submitted that to county staff. So this is a juicy area for you to be aware of, and so I'd encourage you to keep going on the track that you're on.
Thank you. Any other public speakers? I will add on that topic, I believe the regional council is on the 15th. Are they scheduled for September 15th to do their presentation?
I don't recall the date. I could look it up.
I thought they were coming the second meeting in September, but I'll clarify that. But I know through their compound flooding study, it's that type of third-party analysis that helps us in these grants, having an independent outside agency. So if that's available to everybody up here. Did you guys get Mr. Miller, did you get a presentation from the council, regional council on the compound flooding?
Yes, we did. I believe it was maybe about a month ago.
Okay. So they're making the rounds to all of us as they complete that study. But that data and within that is good backup in order to, especially on the resiliency side, to be able to, when we make applications or talk about these projects, they're perfect for grants and even on the allocation side from the legislature.
Chair.
Yes, sir.
Something I just wanted to add in terms of policy asks. We're talking about appropriations and things like that, but from us, we've settled on 3 policy asks. 2 of them are related to local land use, 180 and 784. The other one that I thought was pertinent to the conversation is dispatchers and their potential status as first responders, because it changes some of the things in terms of their benefits. So I think we're going to support that, that they receive that status, and nothing's obviously written. I've talked to Representative Greco about it, and he seems receptive to working on that with a couple other members of the House as well. But since it would, potentially affect county, I thought, maybe we should have that conversation as well, and what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, we haven't had that conversation yet as a group. So do you have anything to add to that, Ms. Petito?
No, I know it had gone through legislature in the past and it failed. I imagine that it'll probably come back through. And some of those different things that they supply are more of like the special risk that they provide to police and fire when you look at retirement and things like that.
Yeah, I think they get FRS, right? If that
They
were
get
to go
FRS,
through.
and right now they get what a normal county employee would get. So there was a push to make them where they were like first responders.
I think they're tagged as clerical or administrative, right? Versus
Like a
what a
regular,
first
it would be like a regular county employee is treated, correct? But I hadn't heard if it's going to come. I imagine it would come up again, only because it's come up, I think, twice in the past.
I had talked to, when we were in Tallahassee, I talked to, I believe it's Danny Alvarez, representative, and I know specifically he authored one of those that failed. So I pointed Representative Greco in his direction to kind of, what were the barriers to that, and, what maybe needs to change with the ask in terms of the way that's written to maybe gain more support. But anyways, just wanted to bring it up, for your future discussions as a possibility to support. I think it's a worthy cause.
Okay. We can add that. We have one more meeting on policy and legislative priorities before the deadline. So maybe, do you think we should bring that up, Ms. Pennington, as well to talk about? Okay. Great. Watch your mic. Move your mic back over.
Sorry about that. So I was just saying she's a huge advocate for it. So potentially she could give you more information or speak on the behalf of that policy.
Well, mentioning policies real quick, R3, one was covering 180, which I think everybody is covering. One was on beach easements. Without getting into the specifics, there's existing legislation that covers specific areas in the Panhandle on the Gulf of America, and we're looking to expand that statewide, so it would help us with not having to get easements every time we need construction on the beach. And the other one was asking for more counties specifically to qualify for the sixth penny for a tourist development tax. It's available, but we don't qualify. So it would need to be expanding the qualifications for beach, I forget how we worded it, but I think for all the oceanside counties so that they were able to use it for nourishment and beach protection.
It was for all coastal communities, whether
Okay.
you're on the Gulf or the Atlantic.
Right.
To consider it. I did want to mention, only because you had asked, September 15th, 1 o'clock, our workshop is when Northeast Florida Regional Council will be
All right,
here.
very good.
And just for the people in the room, I'm not sure if they're aware, but the sheriff's office, the transition of dispatch is coming over to the county, just so everybody's aware. So wasn't sure if you knew.
Any other policy? Anybody else want to talk about policies in their areas? All right, seeing none, if it's okay, we'll go ahead and move on. Last item is on, as a follow-up on beach nourishment. All right. It worked, there we go. Whoop. All right, do you want to help me with this slide, Ms. Petito?
Certainly. So this is just to give you an update that we got new news from DEP a couple weeks ago, now showing, I mean, it's not good news, it is good news, but it's really not, that we now have 10 miles of critically eroded. Before we had 8 miles. Now we're up to 10.3 miles of critically eroded coastline. The good news with that, if there is any, would be that in that area of 10 miles, you're now eligible for cost share with the state of Florida. However, you need to have a local match. It's 50-50. And you also need to demonstrate that you have adequate public access parks, walkovers. There are certain facilities that need to be part of that to make it eligible in the state size. But it is something that we're working towards, especially the area that got added. It now fills the gaps from Varn Park all the way to the southern border. And then we've got a small little segment, I think it's like 0.3 miles in Marineland, the north end. So it is good for us in the fact that we're now eligible, more areas will be eligible for that cost share with DEP. So that's important moving forward. And then in our fiscal year 26 budget, the county did allocate, I think it's 8.12 or 8.19 million for beach management for next year. And that'll help close the gap on some of the cost of construction that we have as we start working north. And that's kind of the layout of how we came up with that funding. So general fund, we put that amount in there. And then TDC, that's actually the 2 pennies, a little bit of half-cent sales tax, and then carry forward from the current year. And that's how we got to the, there it is, the 8.19 million. So I don't know if there's questions on that. But then the FEMA Cat G, good news, we had the press conference earlier. We just got notified of the obligation from FEMA for Hurricane Milton, and that's for a total project of $11.7 million. What got obligated from FEMA was that $8.7 million. That Congressman Fine was very helpful in getting the final signature. It had been sitting at DHS for about 2 months, and he was able to get that signed for us. So now it's obligated. It's over to the state Department of Emergency Management. So what happens is with that, FEMA will cover 75%. The remaining 25 gets split between the state DEM and local. So each of us need to come up with the 1.4 million. So that money is already earmarked out of the current 5 million that we had set aside in beach management that we put in 25's budget. So we have that match already covered for the county for that portion. We do have, I didn't put it on the slide, but we do have more funding coming. It's under environmental review at DEP. It's been up there for close to 2 years, so we're working with Congressman Fine to get that moving. And that's for Cat G funding for Hurricane Ian and Hurricane Nicole. And so we're hoping through that, it's in an environmental historic review process. The cost is somewhere around $5.5 million. So we're still working that with his office to try to get them expediting that. They're just validating the data that had been provided by our coastal engineer. You may recall that BOEM and DEP had already moved the process along. It's just FEMA had some additional requirements, so they're taking their time on the environmental side. So that should be coming hopefully soon. And then, you know, I don't know, we still need to work on ongoing discussion for some sort of recurring revenue. When we look at the way, how are we going to fund it? Right now, we're not really looking at the construction aspect. That's really what the county's been working on with grants and coming up with some local funding. It's really going to be the ongoing. Once you build it, we need to maintain it. For those of you that either heard Congressman Fine or were in attendance today, I think he, you know, kind of said the message that, you know, we are a coastal community. When you look at the state of Florida, you need to protect your biggest asset, and that is, I think, our beach. So we need to figure out a way to do that. We had met over probably a 2-year period. I know I had pulled the last 4 years, and I think I had 89 different discussions about the beach and had given presentations in various forms, but we really don't have an ongoing revenue stream that's going to be able to do this. So I know that we had looked at the half-cent sales tax as a potential thing, and there had been discussion about whether or not it needed to go out for referendum. I know it wasn't required if you used the supermajority on the board side, but we didn't have a supermajority. It doesn't mean that it's done. We could go out for referendum. It would be in November of '26. But I think and I'm just speaking for myself at this point, not the board, but I think it would make sense if to have a discussion and see if there's support for a referendum, and if there was support, to let us know. And then part of the makeup of the beach funding has always been either an MSBU or an MSTU. It doesn't really pertain to Bunnell or City of Palm Coast as much, but the MSBU or MSTU districts would be for the people on the barrier island. We did the analysis with our coastal engineer to determine what the long-term cost is going to be, because you need to have a cost before you can do the apportionment of who's going to pay for it. But I think in order for you to even get to the point of coming up with an amount for an apportionment, we need to figure out what are the other pieces, because if you looked at the $12 million that's needed and strictly put it on the 10,000 or so parcels that exist on the barrier island, I think, in my opinion, I think it's going to be a little cost prohibitive for people. So we need to figure out what are those ongoing revenue streams going to be. If it's a half-cent sales tax, is it going to be the continued pledge of TDC revenue? Is it going to be the county contributing general fund for the beachfront parks, because we have 2 miles of coastline out of the 18? So some of those things make sense, but we need to figure out the biggest chunk of it. We were looking at the method that we were looking at using half-cent sales tax. It was putting, I think you guys have a copy of it, and I'm just going off memory, but maybe $7 or $8 million a year was coming from half-cent sales tax. How are we going to make up that difference? Because it's a large component of the $12 million overall that's needed. The MSBU or MSTU was only going to equate to, I think it was like 1.7 million, 1.8 million a year towards the 12. So it's a small piece. So I don't know if there's anything else. I think it's in your backup. You should have where we left off. I think it was from a May 5th presentation, which was the last one that I could find in our file, but it's similar to what we looked at before. I didn't include the section on the construction, only because we've been working on that As I stated, we pledged the 8.1 towards that, and some of these grants that we're getting will continue to work, towards that. It's just covering some of those local matches that we've been trying to get, so.
All right, thank you. So I think, right, a big takeaway from today is going to have circle on this discussion about how do we fill the remaining larger gap. Without the supermajority from the county commission, if there's, right, discussion on the appetite for the half cent as a referendum, it changes the focus from the commission being in charge of voting it. Really now it becomes a community-wide ballot initiative. And if, so we need to, it makes it, I think if we come from a unified front, it definitely helps. If the government's, right, that we're benefiting through the distribution of the half-penny funds, portion going to the beach, portion staying local for general revenue, all that staying the same, if there's still the appetite to get behind and push for a voter-approved referendum, then it definitely is political at that point. As we approach an election season, we have to get this done pretty quickly. The supervisor didn't give me deadlines, but I know from sitting on the canvassing board that we are in a kind of a hurry-up mode to be able to do ballot language, get it approved and reviewed in time to get it on the ballot. So between now and the next few months, we would have to move that way. And really, as the next step, I guess, is everybody, want to just get everybody's opinion on the next step in order to fill up that remaining gap with a sales tax referendum. As Ms. Petito had explained, the need is still there. It hasn't gone away. But through this budget season, we've been focusing on the construction and allocating funds to used for construction funding at this point. So who wants to start off?
I can jump in. So I know when we had this discussion before, we brought it back to our board. I think the last discussion we had on it, I can't remember if we had all five at that point yet, but I believe myself and the mayor had talked about being in support of it from the beginning, and then I believe Councilman Gambaro and the vice mayor had been in support of a referendum. So if we're talking about a referendum at that point, I don't know what it looks like now, but at that point, the city of Palm Coast was in favor of a referendum. So I think you would have our support with that.
If you want to try it on a referendum, Chairman, that's completely up to you. But I think you know how that's going to work out.
Well, I don't have that ball, but I mean, it's right. That's part of the process. Is as you do referendums, it becomes having to present the data, public meetings, lots of information, a lot of transparency on where it's going and how it'll be, how it will be backed up, over the course of the referendum the school board just did theirs with a committee to follow it up. So every year the committee is looking at where the funds have been spent and make sure it's going toward what it was, the ballot language says. So yes, it's an uphill battle. I'm not gonna deny that, but the best you can do is give the information to the residents and let them decide.
I think people will be opposed to any tax increase, and I think they're looking for accountability and safeguards that the money's going to be, specifically designated and used for that.
Right.
That specific. I've already expressed my thoughts on the half cents because necessities aren't taxed, and it's going to save the beaches, which is our main tourism draw to the county. And I'll help you out as much as possible when it comes down to trying to promote it. But I think the citizens of our city want very tight accountability and their money going to where it says it's going. So we'll see how it works out. But I think me and Councilman Miller, we were in support of, you guys approving it, because you don't have to go through that whole process. And we're probably going to have our charter amendment on that ballot too. So it's going to be a long ballot.
Okay.
I was just going to add to that in terms of the timeline. I think our charter review, everything's due by, I think, March. So it's probably a very similar timeline to this referendum to have that kind of the wording and everybody in agreement prior to that. I think there's some other things we can discuss about the accountability, especially with the funds potentially that would be retained by Palm Coast that we could talk about at our meetings. But yeah, in full agreement that I think in support of it from the beginning, but also as a referendum.
Okay. Mayor City Bonnell, I know you guys were supportive before, but you may want to take it back you have, I think, 2 new members, right?
Well, and we had, a brief conversation at the beginning of the idea, and yes, so we have two new members, and I think if you're going to talk referendum, we need to go back and talk referendum,
Okay.
because at the time, that wasn't really what was on the table. So,
Well, if you need us to come do a presentation, let us know.
okay. You have anything you want to say?
Yeah, I think a presentation will be beneficial for me being one of the new members, so.
Okay.
Yeah, most definitely.
Okay. Ms. Pennington, did you?
Yeah, I'm going to be the Debbie Downer, right? So our board has not come to a consensus yet on a referendum, so that needs to be dealt with. So just to let FYI, I'm surprised to see it, but that's fine. But the bigger part of this discussion comes back to referendum, or if we pass it, not saying that we're passing it, but are you going to commit to the percentage of funds needed from your share to the ongoing project? And that's by putting it out to referendum, you're also going to have new boards. We're going to be right back at square one if your new people don't want to contribute 80% or whatever the number is. I don't know how that works. I'm just being honest. How does that work? Can we do this? Let's say it passes. Can we actually do it without new boards undoing it?
Well, I would,
And they don't have, you don't have a beach. So how does that work? Is the referendum under infrastructure? So they could say, well, this new referendum's not about a beach, it says infrastructure, so I could choose to keep my entire share and get my infrastructure complete. And then the whole thing collapses and puts us right back at square one. And sorry, that's where just my mind was going in that very moment of thinking of this as we're changing out boards.
right, well, that goes back to
Yeah.
the interlocal agreements, which was what we were working on earlier in the year. So you would have to get those approved in advance of the date of the referendum vote, is the only way I could see that.
She
So
makes
I'll
a
look
good
over
point.
to our legal team and administrator, but I assume we would want to get, if again, Ms. Pennington's point is, we haven't had this discussion, this is as the group of other governments, talking about the referendum, we haven't pushed this or discussed this from the county commission level yet, but
I think her point's well taken. I don't know that I should go back and talk to my board about this meeting and how this may be on the table if really and truly it hasn't been decided yet. That's
I
how
think,
you want to
right,
handle it.
what we've done in the past leading up to, and really one of the reasons we get this committee together, other than the initial reasons that Commissioner Cooley brought us together, is to try and share ideas. If in the past, when the commission has voted to do something without the input of our other governments that were affected, we would get immediate pushback. So we've kind of switched our strategy to open up discussions on items, and this is a great venue to do it, but to talk about issues before the commission votes on it, so we have an idea from our other affected municipalities of what some of the thoughts or conditions are. So it's helpful to have the discussion. I don't want everybody to say, well, they haven't voted, so this is not important yet, or just put it to the side because we still need your input so that we can take it back to us and have that discussion from today's meeting.
Okay.
So just wanted to add, obviously, we still have 3 members of our board not here.
Right.
So we'll bring this up for discussion just to make sure nothing's changed. And I believe Councilman Sullivan was not part of that discussion before, so just to get his input on it as well. But the other thing is, we can have that discussion on the assumption that legally we can work it out. And then if that does not happen, then obviously it can't go forward anyways. So we won't be voting on or signing anything or any of that stuff until all those legal requirements are kind of worked out. So I think we can still have the discussion so that everybody knows where we stand and we can either go forward or not go forward.
I mean, but good point, because, right, the news will leave today with, the referendum is coming to the ballot, but it hasn't not been decided yet. That discussion still has to be made, but I appreciate everybody's, forward discussion here today because it will help us when it comes back to the commission. Flagler Beach.
Flagler Beach, we had a consensus. We are in full support of the referendum. And, we've been in discussions and have been presented other options that just fiscally were not feasible. It just wasn't going to happen. It was too big an ask from the taxpayers, and there was no appetite for it. But the original referendum presentation, I'll just call it, for ease of discussion, Flagler Beach was in full support of. One of the concerns that the city had is just the amount of misinformation that is out there. When you get into referendum stuff, when you have a lot of misinformation surrounding something like that, it gets pretty volatile and it has unintended consequences. And I think a lot of citizens only understand it as, we'll call it a, quote, beach tax, for lack of a better term. They don't understand that in municipalities, there's, only a quarter of that goes to the beach. And the rest of it is a huge advantage and a needed, money injection into a budget. For instance, the examples we were looking at, the city of Palm Coast was looking at around $2 million, I think, a year and up for infrastructure or whatever legally that money could be used for. And I think there's a lot of folks that don't understand the other side of that coin. They only understand the beach, but they don't understand that collectively everyone in the county, including anybody that visits here, would be contributing towards, let's say that Palm Coast was using potentially that for the infrastructure improvements or any of the water improvements needed, that all cities plus tourists and everything will be paying to help build that infrastructure. And I think it's just going to take a little bit of education and some media to get that out there, so all those citizens really understand what the true benefit is, that the money just doesn't go into sand getting dumped on a beach, that there's big amounts of money that municipalities are going to be picking up by keeping half of that. I hope that makes sense.
Yep.
We're in full support of it, and as we should be as a shareholder.
Mr. Bellhammer?
Same answer.
Okay.
Yeah, we got a presentation from the county, and we made that decision right then that same meeting, that we preferred the referendum. The half-cent thing, it just seemed to make sense, and there were leftovers for Palm Coast or leftovers for Bunnell. It's just we as a city on the Barrier Island had to give up our portion, and Marineland and
Right.
Beverly Beach, of course. But it's, if the people understand that that's money they don't have to pay in taxes that they'll get from visitors paying sales tax, then that's part of the message we have to share.
Beverly Beach?
You guys had a program that Heidi worked on for a long time. Heidi came to our commission meeting and gave a great presentation. We were 100% buy-in. We backed you, and here we still are discussing it.
Yes, sir.
We don't agree so much with the referendum. We want to see it go forward, and don't agree with the monies. 100%. We think that, okay, we only pay $1,055,000 or $1 million a year in taxes, and we don't have a lot to say about it, but we appreciate the county. We go along with the county. We work with the county. And, Adam Mingle has helped us out of a scrape as far as the growth management and the permitting and stuff like this. We're getting growing pains too. And not like Palm Coast, not like Flagler Beach, but we're definitely in agreement with the county. And the original plan that Heidi had, we were in agreement with. Referendum, who knows what's going to happen.
Okay. Mr. Cooley?
Just to add on, I think our board is along those same lines. The referendum would be definitely fully supported, but that'd be undesirable. But if that's the way it needs to happen, that's the way it needs to happen. And the sales tax advantage by the taxpayers is it is a controllable expense. Our citizens can decide how much they want to pay into that or not pay into that, versus other options of MSBUs, MSTUs, or even mill rate adjustments. Those are not controllable expenses. And if not the sales tax, then you're getting into the non-controllable expenses. And then you have undesirable things where, if I'm a citizen, I can decide how much or how little my household can do as far as that sales tax goes. The other options, not so much.
Yeah. I'm looking left again. Any other comments?
Well, but regardless, I think when we're talking about misinformation out there, it's not just the new half-cent sales tax that will fund this plan. It will be existing half-cent sales tax. It will be TDC. It will be dedicated millage, which comes from all ad valorem, and an MSBU on the unincorporated. Then the FDEP on the seawalls and everything. So everyone, we say, well, they could choose whether they buy something or not. They're paying regardless. They're paying in millage. They're paying with what they're currently buying. So I don't want that to be lost in translation, that only this half-cent sales tax will carry this entire beach. It just won't. So we will still have to give up ad valorem, which comes from other projects within the county. It means that some people that don't get roads done, some people don't get this, that, and that. And I know you're like, well, we're here to talk about selling a referendum, but I just want that known too, that regardless of the half cent, there are still dedicated lanes that are coming from every member of the county. They'll be paying their additional half-cent sales. They're going to be paying millage every year. Out of the 8.1, they're paying 6.4 of it this year on the construction. So I just didn't want that to get lost, that you're thinking that this half-cent is going to be all of it. And that's going to be the problem. People are going to realize that. It means a lot on the Barrier Island, but it is... Palm Coast has its own problems with stormwater. The West has its own problems with stormwater. And it is very hard to really help people understand how important the Barrier Island is. But I just wanted to say that because we can't make people think it is only this half cent that's going to the beach. It is a lot more that will always go to the beach for this. Sorry.
Mr. Miller?
Yeah, I think the first part of the conversation is, does this have to happen, right? Do we need to do this? Do we need to fund it in this way in order to move forward? If that is agreed upon, then it's how do we pay for it and all the different avenues of it. So it's, obviously a lot of different ways it's being paid for with this plan, but the half cent is the lion's share of it. I don't think it's even possible without that half cent because of how those MSBU's work out in terms of allocations, or even more from millage or whatever the case may be to make up those funds, unless we could somehow find a recurring commitment from federal or state or something like that, but unlikely.
Well, and that, to that point, right now, the MSBU is going to be for the unincorporated, and I guess Flagler Beach and Beverly Beach, Marineland have not talked about an MSBU. But when we talk about fairness, how do you say Flagler Beach isn't going to pay an MSBU, but your unincorporated are, but you're all getting the same benefit? So it's a mucky project that you'll never be able to really be completely fair on how the funding comes. You'll never be able to get to the finite of how fair it was for someone out west versus someone out. You'll just never get there. And we as a county commission have to get comfortable with that thought, and everyone else does too, that we're not going to get the absolute fairness. Unfortunately, we're just a county who doesn't have the funding like other coastal counties who have the option of a lot of tourism taxes, and they have MSBU's. But I want it to be known that all counties participating in this through millage and existing current half-cent sales. And so we have to put that out there. We can't let people think it's just only this half-cent. It's going to carry it all. So anyways.
Well, you made a point on the additional MSBU throughout the Barrier Island, and that has always been a part of the overall master funding plan. So as we go back, we are here and added this only to be able to let you know that we are, from the county side, is here to help with the other municipalities on the Barrier Island to work through this process before the end of December so that you have that ability for the following year to be able to apply an MSBU through your municipality, through your area. It's always been part of the plan, but now we're trying to do the implementation. And we've done it. We did it by last year, before the end of the year, which allowed us to, on the tax bill, we're zeroing out this year. We're not charging anybody anything, but it's still in place so that next year we're able to allocate funds based on the engineering study that comes back. So we just want to be able to provide our expertise in this issue and guidance to Beverly Beach, to City of Flagler Beach, to be able to help you see this through by the end of the year if you need our help.
Chairman Dance, I hate to interrupt you.
Yes.
But I have another commitment that I need to go.
Absolutely. I'm longer than I
Sorry.
wanted to be, so
Well,
I'm
it's
sorry.
okay, but I just gotta go.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Mr. Dance,
Yes, sir.
does anyone know the schedule here for beach re-nourishment? Now, I know we went to Varn Park and went north. Now, I understand that we're going to have dredging from Varn Park south. Is that correct?
I'll probably have the wrong information. I'd rather have Ansley come up, our coastal engineer. She can probably explain it a little bit
okay.
better. We have multiple different phases going on,
Yeah.
so they all have different times.
We tried to warn the people a little bit ahead of time, just a little bit.
Hi, good evening. Ansley Renke, Coastal Engineering Administrator. Yes, we have a lot of different projects going on. It's a busy time. So what we call the Reach 2 project is going to be the big beach nourishment project, the dredging project. We're going to start as soon as the dredge can schedule us. So that project is going to go out to bid at the end of September. That's the plan. Once we have a contractor on board, you know, these dredges go around and they have these jobs and they estimate how much time they'll take, but they can't give us an exact date. So once we get them on board, we'll have a better idea. But what we're looking at is probably early spring of next year. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Ron.
You're welcome.
And the work that's going on and how will be expanded based on today's news, just so everybody's aware.
Yes, right. So, yes, now that our FEMA project from Hurricane Milton has been obligated, we have a contractor out there doing the dune restoration project, which is the truck haul project. And we hope to also use that same contractor for the new obligated FEMA project and just continue north all the way up to Marineland.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Cooley.
Just had a question, Commissioner Pennington, I was just a little confused about what was being referred to. So with the MSBU, you made mention about like the county was paying an MSBU, but I know that there was that also the 160 MSBU that was being discussed. And I guess I wasn't sure what you were referring to.
No, I was I was referring to the MSBU for the North 10 only. That one's, well, it's a little murky. I'm just going to be honest with you. We have it, depending on what slide you get which day from the administration. Some days it says 160, some days it says 260. And I apologize for that. But that's what I was referring to. You know, we had a lot of people reach out and ask why the MSBU is only being charged with a letter that went out in the North 10 and not in Flagler Beach. So I didn't, you know, and I haven't been in discussion with this joint committee on the beach, and it's usually been Mr. Hansen. So I'm not really sure where you left off on an MSBU for Flagler Beach, because I'm not mistaken.
MSBU was part of the 150, wasn't it?
Right.
Originally proposed.
Right. I think your
Okay.
board had met, right, Mr. Dance, when the last time I recall it, because I'm watching it, you'd met that the municipalities were agreeing to do a MSBU, but possibly a grant. Is that correct? Or
No, I didn't hear nothing
No,
about
that's,
grant.
that's been a
that's
long
been a long
time
time
ago.
ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is no MSBU by municipalities.
That
So-
160 was in there in the original.
Yeah, if I could, it's morphed because we've had the presentation so many times over a two-year period. When it started originally, going back to the beginning, everybody in the county, regardless, was paying something. And then it got shrunk back. And so where we left off in May 5th, is what I provided in your packet today. That's where we left off. It was at 160. What we were looking at, but it can't be, when we were doing the numbers, it's a plug number. So when we were looking at it, there's a science that goes into it. We know how much money we need to collect. How are we going to pay for it? So when we were looking at plugging it with half-cent sales tax and new half-cent sales tax, because our current sales tax we use for infrastructure. It's been used for roads, it's been used for fire stations, it's been used for the jail. We need it to continue to go to that infrastructure. So we were hoping that we would introduce the new half-cent, and we would use that solely for the beach. And then we would use the TDC revenue, a portion of general fund, because we have beachfront parks that are publicly owned by Flagler County, so that's why it had that makeup. And then, so when we started creating all the funding sources, we were left with an amount, and we were looking at the amount and saying, okay, is that going to be the MSBU for the Barrier Island? So we took the number, roughly 1.7 million, 1.8, whatever on that sheet, divided it by the number of parcels. That's how you get the 160. What's going to happen now is we have a consultant looking at it, and they're going to do an apportionment based on, it's going to be value-based and what benefit everybody gets. So it may not be 160. In some areas, it might be $50. In other areas, maybe it's going to be 260. So it's going to be an apportionment. It's a process. It's an engineering study where they look at it. But in order to do the apportionment, you really need to know how much do you need to levy in the form of an MSBU. You're not going to look at the whole 12 million. It is an option, but I think it would be very expensive for the people on the Barrier Island, which is why you would look at continuing to use tourist money, because tourists should pay into it. When we look at the parks that are publicly owned, probably general fund will continue to pay for it at the county level. So as you start working towards it, I think the conversation with FDOT needs to be had, whether, you know, is it, originally it was 500,000, now that you have 2 seawalls in your city, should it be $1 million? We have that on our project list of things to talk about with District 5 when we go over to talk to the district secretary. You know, what level of commitment will he provide? I will tell you that right now I don't feel comfortable asking for it because DOT paid the $14 million for the non-federal tapers in Flagler Beach to make that project viable. We were able to secure a grant for reimbursement to go after what was pledged locally, the 14 million, and we were able to get back from DEP 7 million, not our money. It should go back to FDOT, but FDOT's willing to give it to us for Reach 2. So right now, I don't feel comfortable saying, hey, can you also give me $1 million? But I think once the project is done and we're working on maintaining it, it will kick in, but how much are they willing to give us? That would be part of the makeup of the money that we need every year, the 12 million that we're working towards. So what's left after we pledge and identify all of the funding sources, what we're looking at doing for the MSBU.
That's why you don't have it in here until year 29.
Right. And so when we're looking at it, though, the MSBU needs to be established. Even if it's a county-wide, we don't have the authority to do that. By interlocal, we would need permission from Beverly Beach, Flagler Beach, and Marineland to do that, for the county to do that. But we would have to set up that district by the end of the year and notify Department of Revenue in January. Or you don't have to have us do it. You could do it yourself, and it would be an MSTU or something similar, an assessment on your own people. But again, we don't even know the dollar amount yet because we're still working towards. But the important thing is to figure out the district, which would just be your boundary of your community. And that would have to be done by the end of the year.
Yes, sir.
So just for clarity with all, for all the partners, when the city of Flagler Beach had our consensus of, support of the referendum or just the sales tax initiative, part of that was for the original proposal, which was the MSBU of 160. So I don't know if, there was any gap about, it's not in place, obviously. We haven't moved forward with that, but there was support for that. I just wanted everybody to be aware of that, in addition to the referendum initiative.
And giving up the
City,
sales tax.
City of Flagler Beach was interested in all of the aspects of the original proposal, including the MSBU.
Gotcha. Okay. So I guess at this point, I think we've talked half-cent potential referendum. That will come back to the commission for further discussion. And on the MSBUs for within the cities and towns, we are available to help further discuss that moving forward here over the next few months before the end of the year. It's nothing that would be allocated now. It's just the ability to get these mechanisms in place.
As far as the districts, you mean?
Yes.
By the time
Yes.
period of December?
Yes.
Okay. So we talked to Heidi about that, huh?
Absolutely. All right. I'll leave public comment. Let's go out to public comment.
You're in trouble, Dance.
I have one question.
Move over to the mic. Get us.
I have one question.
State your name.
The half-cent sales tax, is that a dedicated tax specifically for beach renourishment? Specific? Not to be spent for anything other than the beach?
Well, as we previously discussed, I would say that it is right with each of the municipalities, for Palm Coast and Bunnell, half of it goes to the beach, yes, and then Palm Coast gets the other.
So you all get a piece of the pie?
Palm Coast
What you're
keeps
saying.
half.
No, wait a minute. It seems to me the critical issue is the beach,
Correct,
right? Washing away, endangering us, everybody. It
correct.
seemed to me that the half-sale cents tax would be a dedicated tax to that issue. And then after, if there's money left over, the county gets it, then you can lower our taxes later, okay? But I cannot understand the distribution going to two other municipalities. Nobody offered me anything, right, or my town. Do you understand what I'm saying? And that's what people are thinking out there. When they hear that, they don't like it. They want dedication of that money that's going to be spent by the taxpayers for what it was meant for.
Well, I think the advantage of the referendum is it's spelled out in the referendum.
Okay.
And you have to hold fast and true to what the referendum states. The intent is for the benefit of the beach, through the construction and through the renourishment and expansion of the beach. And for the municipalities on the barrier island, it was a full dedication of those sales tax funds.
Right.
Now, the other municipalities that aren't on the barrier island, they were okay with the idea of splitting it. So the language in the referendum will also show that within the city of Palm Coast and
I don't see it that way. When you raise a tax, which nobody likes, they want that tax to go towards something that they want done right. And all we're talking about is the millions and millions of dollars for the beach restoration,
correct,
right?
correct.
And we're going to have a half-cent sales tax. Why doesn't that half-cent sales tax absolutely dedicate itself to the beach renourishment? Period. Why is it being this way, that way? No. Just make it in the thing that you're going to make there that it's dedicated money for beach renourishment. Then everything that's left over from it, the county gets it and distributes it any way they want. But the issue is the beach. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Time ran out. Okay, I said my piece.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Thank you. All I'll say is this is the agreement we've had since day one. The agreement that the mayor, is backing because they have infrastructure funds to be able to use as well, and from the city of Bunnell as well. So it was a work in progress to get to that point to where we had a workable solution. And I understand your point, and I think the benefit for the municipalities, Bunnell and for Palm Coast, they will have to be equally transparent with the public on the allocation of those funds toward, and they've said too, toward infrastructure. So they'll be selling that with promises or with plans to show where that money is going to improve their citizens' quality of life through infrastructure improvements. Understood. Yes, sir.
The main issue is the beach money dedicated to it.
Thank you.
David Eckert, Kaleido, sir. A lot of shells moving around in the discussion here, and everybody should be aware that the MSBU is not a choice. It's a default position of establishing it even in the unincorporated area. It's all that's left, and it's on support from the standpoint it's not even being levied during this budget year. Zero levy. It's being held for the future. The other thing I would say is that there's more energy on the dais today than I've ever seen to make something work. And to get the arithmetic straight is complicated. Even though $1.7 million is within the MSBU, within the total of 8.1 or 8.2 collected per year, when you look at the amount of money that comes through the millage rate for ad valorem, or the amount of money that comes out of the barrier island and Flagler Beach into the north and the resort, a significant portion of those monies also come from the barrier island. So there's nearly 50% of the $8.1 million is coming from the barrier island. Now, 1.7 of that is direct through the concept of the MSBU. But there's no doubt that the barrier island is paying a significant part of the burden to maintain the beaches for the county. The next thing I would say is this referendum idea is going to fail unless you do earmark it. Earmarking it just for the shoreline, though, is misleading because if the money is retained by Bunnell and by the city of Palm Case and whatever the ILAs say, they should be identified to where that money should go so that the people that would be tolerating the addition of the half-cent sales tax has an idea between stormwater or libraries or animal shelters or whatever, what it's going to be going to use so that the half-cent sales tax, 30% collected by non-residents here, which is the benefit you were talking about, not only do you identify that as a gift to the county, but you also dedicate where the money is going. Where the money is coming from is it to our advantage, and where the money going is needed. Then, if there's money left over after you do that, you could reduce ad valorem taxes if there's $10.1 million coming in through the additional half-cent sales tax. Isn't that what the state has been talking about, is reducing ad valorem by increasing other taxes? So I would really encourage you to find some way. You might have to do referendums, but you have to explain this correctly to get the fundamental needs on the mainland as well as on the Barrier Island accomplished. So please don't stop.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners, Councillors. My name is Richard Hamilton. I'm a resident of Island Estates, which actually technically is not a barrier island. It's an island in the middle of the Intracoastal Waterway, just offshore from Palm Coast. But we've got about 400 residents. But I'm not representing them. We're talking a lot. We're talking a lot with our other friends up in the hammock and down in Beverly Beach as well about some of the effects. I'm not here to try and tell you what to do because I think it's very important just to listen to what comments you all have and points of view. That's very helpful. I'm not here to advocate for or against the MSBU. It would be against, but we know that we've got time next week. I mean, we're not going to wait to September the 15th to ask questions, but you've got a commission coming up next week, so you'll expect a lot of stuff coming up there. I wanted just to see if I could just clarify a few points because we have so many people who are confused or misunderstood, as you said, about what's going on. You've probably already seen that you stirred up a hornet's nest with that letter to the unincorporated county. I want to just clarify because the announcements today are very positive about Randy Fine and FEMA and so on. My understanding, and could you just clarify, these are numbers that are already expected within Heidi's plans. They're not new numbers that are going to give us a whole lot of new money that we weren't somehow counting on. They're just making them happen. They're just confirming. So if you could just clarify that. Secondly, I'd like to understand, is there still time if you were to decide not to do the referendum and one or more of your colleagues could somehow be prevailed upon to pass? Is there still time to put in the sales tax now and confirm it without this issue of will it or will it not pass a referendum next year? I've already asked Heidi, perhaps if she could clarify. Actually, I asked Jorge, but he's not around. We seem to be talking about 4 different half-cent sales tax. We know a half-cent goes to the school for the technology and is not part of this debate. We know there's a new half-cent sales tax that we're talking about. We know but there appears to be 2 existing half-cent sales taxes in the current budget. And it's not clear. One went to pay for fire stations and bonds, and one is $3 million is going to the beach and some to a police substation. But there seem to be 2 in your budget. That needs a clarification, just so we're not arguing about this tax, that tax, whatever. We're also just looking to see about the Joint Committee on the Beach. I'll echo to Mr. Eckert. I do support him on this. We have a lot of disagreements, but the the compound flooding study is extremely important, that we learn more about it. Here on the intracoastal side of the islands and Palm Coast, our issues aren't the beach and the effect it might have on dunes erosions. Our issues are the rising waters in the intercoastal, flooding in from Matanzas Inlet. It threatens us, it threatens everybody on both sides of the intercoastal, and therefore we're very interested in learning flooding study and how we can fund some of the improvements that are needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you take away from the fact that this regional council will be here on the 15th workshop on the 15th to present the study? So you'll want to be here for that.
I did. I wasn't sure if it was a public workshop, but
Yes, sir.
The fact it is.
All
And
of
I
ours
was
are
going to
public.
promise I was only going to speak once this time.
Ours are all public workshops, okay. So just a few clarifications. Today's Congressman Fine's announcement was just in releasing money we had already had in the pipeline, right?
Correct. He just helped execute it a little bit quicker. It had a sticking point.
And the existing funding sources for the county, we have an existing half penny.
We only have a half penny,
Right.
and the school board has a half penny.
Right.
And when we authorized ours by ordinance, it did not go out for referendum, therefore it cannot be pledged for debt. But when we authorized it, it was for construction, reconstruction, or improvement of public facilities, including but not limited to public safety facilities, roads, bridges, stormwater, beach restoration, recreational improvements, and general public infrastructure. So when you look at our budget, it is split among different projects, but those projects are, I think I'm on his borrowed time. Those projects are how it's being divvied up in our budget, but it is only a current half cent that we get.
Okay, great. That's new. The administrator is now on a 3-minute time limit. I think that was your questions, correct? I believe so. All right, so let's, if there's any other public comment? All right, we'll close public comment, bring it back. Final comments on today's topics? All right, and then topics for next meeting. Anything on anybody's mind right now that we want to, I think we continue. The beach topic is obviously one that we'll continue. And probably continue lifeguards. We may not need another meeting for that. Maybe we'll finish it up at the next meeting, but that'll probably be continued as well. If there's any.
Chair.
Yes, sir.
For next topics, I'd like to just have an opportunity to go back to the board and, seek input on that. And we can submit it through the administrators.
Say that one more time.
For topics for the next
Yes.
meeting?
Yes,
I'd just
absolutely.
like to go back and get input.
We lost a couple, but if we have the next available dates, February the 4th, February the 25th, March 4th, and March 25th. I don't know that we're that we can come to a consensus with who's left, but how do you want me to handle the next meeting date? I was
the
under
dates
orders
to
to
our-
try and get this nailed tonight, but
Send the dates to our clerks.
right, February 4th, if you want to write them down. February 4th, February 25th,
My pen, right?
March 4th, and March 25th. I didn't know if you had if there was specific events that would cancel some of those dates and we could mark them off.
Not having that calendar in front of us, I don't know,
Okay.
especially getting out into next year.
All right, I tried my best.
We already have the 4th as a hold for joint county on our calendar.
Okay.
So our admin's leaning forward.
Way to go, Lauren. So it looks like if we can pencil in, then let's pencil in March 4th. February 4th, February 4th. Okay. And then we'll get that out to everybody. All right, we did public comment. Any other items for discussion?